Israel is 5,690 miles away from the US, 11 hours by plane. Hate travels faster. In a comment, in a post, in a second. Jewish hate is up 388% in the US. Black hate, Muslim hate, and Asian hate are up too. When one hate rises, they all do. Let's stand up to all hate together. Share and wear the blue square from standuptojewishhate.org.
What's up? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Thank you so much for being here. I created this show for you, finding the best humans on the planet to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. Let's do this. I am so excited that you're here because you guys have been an amazing audience, and you're always liking and sharing, subscribing, and all of that great stuff. So make sure you go ahead and do that. I have such a phenomenal conversation to have with you. So somebody who comes on the show just to give you some nuggets with no intention of selling you anything. How good is that? Okay. His name is Clint Rush, and he served as a soldier and military officer leading troops into training, combat, and rebuilding operations around the world with the U.S. Army. And he has worked as the president and chief executive officer of a global freight company, executive vice president operations, leading a network of clinics across the U.S. to provide innovative and non-invasive therapy and improve heart function. And there's so much more to Clint. And Clint, first of all, thank you for your service. My husband is is an Army vet as well. And so I really, really love you guys, and I honor you for your service. Seriously do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're here. I love that you just want to serve. I mean, it's so freaking cool because I know me and you talked about a lot of great things when we met. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, if we can get into who Clint, we're going to get into who Clint is first, but then I want to talk about, success amid adversity, right? So having success, even though things are coming at you, because everybody's feeling that right now, especially with this economy and all of this information and AI and just a lot of stuff going on. So Clint, before we go there, who are you? Who are you?
Who am I?
Break it down.
All right. So I actually, it's funny you asked that. I have the greatest answer ever to that. And there's one person who's going to hear this, who's going to fall off his chair laughing when I say it. The answer to who I am is I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude. And so the answer, the story behind that answer, years ago, this is before I went to Iraq. We were having, some training and talking about this idea of identity and this idea of understanding the identity of the people that we were going to be interacting with over there. Mm-hmm. And so the guy who was doing the instruction he's an incredibly successful and decorated officer, brilliant guy, master's degree. I think he's got a PhD, and then weirdly also played middle linebacker in college. So like really a Renaissance man. And he's going around the room and he's asking everybody, how do you define yourself? How do you, what's your identity? And so somebody says, I'm a Christian, or I'm an officer, I'm a dad, I'm a soldier, like all these different things. And it gets to me and I go like, I don't know. I kind of don't have like one of those things. So I said, I don't know, man. I'm just a dude. And everybody thought it was funny. And so for forever, I just became the dude, which was really cool because I love The Big Lebowski. So somebody who doesn't want to be defined by any one of those things, right? And so that's kind of, I think, why I am just at my core, just a dude. But I'm a guy who grew up in Minnesota, went to college at the University of Wisconsin, dropped out of school and joined the Army the day after September 11th. And spent the next 8 years of my life, getting that experience and growing as a person. And then, went back to school during that time. The Army sent me back to school and then brought me back on active duty as an officer. Wow. So I spent time enlisted, spent time as an officer, and then entered the business world and moved through a variety of roles in operations and finance and business development, worked in consulting, and then eventually, moved into some executive leadership roles. And so that's what brings me, to kind of where I am today. I'm an incredibly fortunate husband and father. I've got 2 kids and couldn't be happier there, but that's who I am in a nutshell.
That's so cool. So after 9/11, how that was a defining moment for so many of us, and obviously for you as well. So were you planning on joining the military at all before that? No,
not at all. not at
So
all.
this was like a
I
patriotic thing for you. This is like, I have to do this.
Yeah, I woke up that morning as so many of us did, obviously not knowing what was going on. And I actually
Right.
remember, I logged into my computer and I pulled up ESPN.com, and in the corner there was this little thing that said Twin Towers under attack. And this will tell you like how disconnected I was from that. My first thought was that this is a story about Tim Duncan and David Robinson, at the Spurs, the Twin Towers of that basketball team, because I'm
Right.
on a sports website. And so I clicked on it expecting some kind of a basketball thing, and all of a sudden I just see this terrifying and horrific, image. And I walked out of my bedroom into the living room of our little apartment. And to be clear, when I say bedroom and living room, it's like bedroom, closet into living
Right.
closet, right? Like this is, a college apartment.
Right.
And one of my roommates was sitting on the couch, and his jaw was on the floor, and he was watching the news. And I just sat down next to him, and I don't think either of us moved for probably 8 or 10 hours. Like we
Right.
just sat
Right.
there, and like so many people in the country. And
Right.
it was just this amazing thing. And the next morning I just woke up and said like, all right, now I go do this. Right. Like
Wow.
that's the next thing. So, I walked into the recruiter's office that day, and I said, let's do this. And this is before kind of the swell of, I don't think there were a lot of people who were in that mindset. And so he said, well, let me tell you what the Army has to offer you. And I said, let me tell you how to recognize buying signs. Like I'm like, we're doing it, right? Like it's
Right.
you don't need to sell me, man. We need to do paperwork now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything in the Army, it takes forever to do the paperwork. So it took a few months, but it's an experience that, it's a decision I made that I will never, ever regret in any way.
Oh,
It's
that's
the defining
awesome.
experience of my life.
Now, were there any regrets though waiting those few months? Like, was there
Oh yeah,
anything in you that's, yeah, okay, yeah. Because
absolutely.
I'm sure it
Totally
got
impatient.
scary, right? Yeah, yeah.
No, I was more impatient than anything. I
Oh,
was
oh,
more,
the opposite.
it was
Okay.
like, yeah, no, it wasn't regret about the decision. It was like, hey,
Okay.
why is this taking so long? Like I
Right.
want to get moving. And I'm somebody who, when I make a decision, I don't like the grass to grow under my feet. Right. And so
Right.
um,
Was that
it
something that
was,
was in your family though? Military? Oh,
no, my grandfathers served, but not the generation after them. Nobody did.
right,
No, but my
right.
grandfathers were in World War II. Like so many
Mm-hmm.
people's grandfathers were.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Wow.
it was a
Wow. That's a
very
big decision.
very out of left field. Very
Yeah.
out of left field. I think that was
How did your family feel about that?
I think they were a bit surprised, to be sure.
I'm sure.
Um, and I think at first, I think they thought it was me being impulsive.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and I think
that's what I thought too. That's why I said, how
yeah,
did you feel those few months, right? Because you would think, okay, now the fear has or the anxiety has gone away. So
yeah.
maybe now I'm like, oh shoot, I already got the paperwork going. That's what I was thinking. You're like, no, I think too long. I want to go. Wow. It's a different
No,
reaction now.
I'm somebody who, when I make a decision, like that's the decision. It's time to
Right.
execute against it. And I think um what my parents and my brothers and my extended family all kind of came to see was that it wasn't an impulsive decision, that it was a decision that was made quickly,
Hmm.
but that wasn't made rashly, right? And I think those are different. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it was something that it was something that I needed
Hmm.
personally, and I think it was something that was an opportunity to do right by others, and I think they got comfortable with it. I don't think they were ever enthusiastic about it, right? I
Right.
know that the time that I was in Iraq was certainly hard on them, um, but I think they were very supportive of the decision I made.
How was your experience in the military?
Um, it absolutely changed me in the best possible way, and there are the highs that you experience in that line of work and in that environment, right? I
Hmm.
think the
Hmm.
highs of combat are the greatest highs that um, that ever will exist, right? The adrenaline's the best adrenaline you're ever going to have. It's the most addictive drug imaginable, and it's wonderful. And there are things that, you get to do these incredible things and be in situations that are, they're fun and they're rewarding in a very, and I say fun, but they're rich and rewarding and just nourishing to who you are. And then that's juxtaposed against these other situations that are just horrific, right? And you see, you see what people are capable of doing to other people, and it makes you really question, the foundations of a lot of the things you grow up believing. It makes you question who we are as a species. And that's a very weird juxtaposition, to have those great days and those very difficult days. And I think, the business world, the civilian world, it's never going to have the highs that I had there, but it's also never going to have the lows that I had there. And I think that's okay. Right. That's okay. But the lessons that I learned, the things that I grew as a person, and the things that, we were able to do for so many people, those don't go away. Right. Those are forever. And there's something really cool about that.
It looks like, I was reading a bit of your bio, and very impressed with all the work that you've done. So it made me think, I'm sure that the experience of being in the military, right, and having that discipline and that mindset and the go-getterness, for lack of a better term, right? Yeah. Do you feel like well, first of all, let me back up. So what is it that you think that you developed, right, as being in the military and then coming back out to be in the civilian world, and because you were like vice president, you did all this great stuff. So what are the things, like, people who are listening right now, right, if you had like one or two things to tell somebody how to be a better leader or a better entrepreneur or whatever, what would that be? What do you need?
There's three things that are absolutely essential, and I firmly believe that the military, I don't know if it created those in me or if it honed those in me and I already had them, but I do know that when I got out, I had them, right? And I had them much stronger than I ever did before. The first one is, you have to be willing to make a decision. You have to be willing to just make a choice, right?
That was already in you, Clint.
I think it was. That
was already in you. For God's sakes, you joined the military the day after. That was already in you, bro, dude.
Nice. But I think, I think that, like, you have to be willing to commit to something, right, and be comfortable making a decision in an environment of ambiguity, right? And I think, that's something that people are afraid to make decisions. I've never understood that. Because life doesn't get better till you shoot back, right? It does not, like, things aren't going to improve on their own. You have to take action. And so I think that's the first one. The second one is, you have to recognize that a lot of those decisions are going to be wrong. And that's okay. It's very okay to be wrong. What's not okay is to know you're wrong and continue to execute.
Or not do it at all.
Right. And I think that's something that, like, that's definitely something that the Army gave me, and my experience in combat gave me, was the ability to go, okay, this isn't working, right? This plan is not working. We're going to rinse and repeat. Like, we're going to figure something else out. That created in me a very much, I'm a big fan of the phrase, and I was using it with a friend of mine the other day, of strong opinions held loosely, right? Which is very much how I operate, right? Strong opinions held loosely. I believe this to be true. This is true. And then you give me one additional fact and I go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever thought in my life. We're on to something else. Right. And, like, that's okay. And I think that's the second thing that really is so essential. And then I think the third one is to recognize that adversity is a gift. Adversity is a gift.
Break that down for us.
When things don't go right, you learn so much more. You learn so much more.
So much more.
If you think about all the things that, like, you try something and it goes right, now you've built this very wrong-headed idea that inherently, if I just do that again, I'll be successful. But that's not true, because those circumstances aren't going to show up again, right?
That's right.
And I think that being able to embrace adversity and being able to say, look, a bad thing happened, and that's okay, right? Now we just have to get to work on fixing it. Now we just have to get to work on adjusting around it. The most tragic national event of my lifetime, right, occurred, and it spurred me to do something that changed the arc of my life and made me a better person. Now, I'm not saying that thing was a good thing. It certainly was not a good thing. But what I'm saying is that you have to recognize that it gives you this opportunity. I was last night before I went to bed, I was flipping channels and Up in the Air was on, the George Clooney movie. And it was the scene where he's firing J.K. Simmons, and he tells him, like, your kids never respected you. And he says, they never respected you because you don't chase your gift. Like, you don't chase your passions, right? And he said, you've got an opportunity today. You're getting laid off, but you've got an opportunity to go be a French chef. Go do it. Like, go cook French cuisine. That's the thing you want to do. You're being given this opportunity. And I think that's the third one that you learn more about your product when it doesn't work. You learn more about your team when you hire the wrong person. You learn more about your team when somebody says to hell with this and quits. Like, you learn more about your processes when a customer calls and they're cheesed off because something didn't work right.
Yep.
Like, adversity gives you all these gifts, and that doesn't mean go find adversity, but it does mean don't run from it, right? Like,
but you know what?
Right.
But you know what, Clint? There's also a mindset to this, because everything these days is a catastrophe. Everything, right? It's I'm Generation X, right? So we're pretty tough skinned, we're
absolutely.
pretty tough skinned. A lot of stuff doesn't really get to us. It's like, whatever, man. And we keep it moving.
Yep.
Not that I'm bashing this new generation. Maybe a little bit, because I got a lot of kids and grandkids. But dang, I mean,
you know what I think it is?
Everything is a catastrophe. I'm like, come on.
There's been such a rise in this use of the word outrage, right? There's been such a rise in this idea of, like, I'm outraged about something. Okay, something can go right. Like, that's okay.
Right.
That's how life works. Now, again, you shouldn't root for it. Like, you shouldn't root for it, and you shouldn't be, you shouldn't not, there's a nice Dan Deerdorf double negative for you, but, like, you shouldn't not do everything possible to ensure a good outcome for yourself.
Right.
Like, I don't, I'm always going to advocate for my team, my company, my organization, whatever it is. And I'm not going to leave any bullets in the gun, so to speak. Right. I'm going to go all the way at it all the time. And when things don't go my way, I'm going to advocate to make them go my way. But when they eventually don't go my way, I'll take the loss and I'll learn from it.
Right.
I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to just say, okay, well, that's the way it is.
Right.
I'm going to fight back.
Right.
But when I recognize that there's an opportunity to learn from it and just go, look, that didn't work. Okay.
Yeah. So how do you develop that? Right. Because I think we're just in a whole different generation, in a whole different world, Clint. We're looking at a whole different world, right?
Yeah.
So let's just have some straight talk, right? How do we get this generation, or this catastrophizing, or this victim mentality, or everything is against you type of thing? Like, I don't live in that space, so I get annoyed by it, right? So I'm trying to be a little bit more compassionate about it, because I mean, even, my kids were raised by me, so they're more like me. They're more like the Generation X, even though they're more, young, right? They're 28 or whatever have you. So anyway, how do we get them to understand that not everything is a catastrophe? Like, not everything has to be your way. Not everything has to appease you. Not everything is going to be easy. Like, there's just this disconnect, I think, from my generation, the Generation X, people say everybody forgot. It's just because we don't give a damn. That's really the reason why you don't hear too much of us, because we just get up, we brush off our, our wounds, and we keep it moving, right? So there is a big gap, right?
I think there is.
Yeah.
I don't
know.
So I think that there's a couple of pieces there. The first one is disconnecting um, the event and the occurrence from what it means morally or about who you are, right? I think
Right.
that people have, we want to buy from companies that are socially aligned with us, right? We want our companies to take a social stand, and
Right.
I've never understood that because
Right.
that's not what those that you know. Look,
Right.
when I go put gas in my car, right? My major concern is that the octane that comes out of that pump is the octane that's on the button, right? Like
Right.
I don't care. I don't care what they think about, any social issue. That's not that. Give me the
Right.
gas.
Everything's
I
gone
give you the money.
political.
You give me
Everything's
right.
gone political. So,
And the
yeah.
consequence of that is that I think it makes it becomes part of who we are. Our
Hmm.
work has become so a part of who we are that
Hmm.
when things don't work, we take it personally. When
Right.
we get a question wrong, we take it personally.
Right.
When you're in a meeting and you look at somebody and say, what do you think about it? And they start to go like, well, on the one hand, it could be, look, man, I don't need that answer.
Right.
I don't need you to summarize the discussion. I want your opinion. And I
Right.
think people are afraid to be on the wrong side of an issue, right? We hear
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
hear that term of like be on the right side of history. Well,
Right.
listen, the way to get on the right side of history is to have somebody arguing the wrong side of history. And if
Right.
nobody's going to argue it, you're going to make a bad choice. And so I think
Yeah.
the first thing that has to happen is people they have to divorce that idea of like your opinions reflect or your decision making business wise reflects your morality, right?
Right.
It's okay to be wrong. Now,
Right.
listen, that doesn't mean go out and do immoral things. There are
Of
things that are
course.
right. There are things that are moral and immoral. But like, if we're deciding between, whether the background on your show should be, a red background or a blue background, right? And we end up going with red, then the decision to go red versus blue or red versus green or whatever the heck it was, like it's not a question of who we are as people, right? It's
Right.
not a question of who we are as people. It's
Right.
just okay to have that discussion.
Right.
Um, I think that's the first one. And once people get comfortable being wrong, they're so much more willing to be a part of that really rich discussion, and make better choices. The second thing that
Yeah.
has to happen is they have to shake off those being wrongs, right? They have to accept that like you're not going to get them all right. You're just not.
And you don't know
You're just not.
everything. Right.
No. I
Right.
asked, I was meeting with a guy recently, and he asked me like, scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think you did at your last job? Or how well would your last job's boss say you did? Right?
Hmm.
This is a while ago, and I said I don't know, maybe a 6 or a 7, and his eyes got really wide. And I said what? He said that's the most honest answer I've ever had to that question. Most people say 9 or 10, and I said well then they're full of it, right? 6 or 7.
Right.
Like if you're a 7, you're getting 2 out of every 3 decisions right.
Right.
That's a Hall of Fame batting.
Hey there, my amazing community of straight talkers. I just wanted to give a quick announcement because I wanted to introduce you to a transformative life coaching program that I have made exclusively for women. I want them to break free from shame and embrace their true potential so that they can build that life and business that they have always wanted. Now, our transformational coaching will guide you. We will help you. We will uncover your passion, your goals, and will develop your roadmap to success. Visit me at neenaperez.com and you can join an amazing community of women that are on the same trajectory as you, because I want you to create that life and business you deserve and transcend that shame and unwanted behaviors. So don't wait any longer. Visit neenaperez.com and let's embark on this journey together. Now back to the show.
Average, like that's
Right.
fantastic.
Not
Right? Two
nowadays,
out of
though.
every 3,
It's
but
all or
but
nothing.
people are right, exactly. And there's a fear of being wrong.
Yeah.
And I think you
Yeah.
have to just punch through that fear.
Yeah. There's a fear of being wrong. There's also a fear of having your own mind. There's a fear of having your own opinion. There's a fear
Yeah.
of you believing something where you're going to be called names. There's a fear of a lot of things right now. And
Yeah.
it's sad to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's sad because we used to be able to have really hard, candid conversations, and then we would
Mhm.
still go all out for a drink. Like
Yes.
it was like that, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was like a really phenomenal place. I think to be, I always
Yeah.
say that I think I was born in the best generation and in the right generation because I was born before all the social media and technologies and all the
Yeah.
babying everybody. I was born
Yes.
before that, but I
Yeah.
also am able to experience technology stuff, which is also very good and
Right.
bad.
Yes.
So I think that
But you have,
and
but you
we're
have
the last
context.
generation too. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You have context.
Yeah,
You have
yeah, we're the
context
last
because you had something
generation
before
though.
it. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, we're the last one to ever have that context where we know what a vinyl record is and we know what
Yes.
MP4, MP3 is, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, it's an amazing generation. I am really pleased that God chose to put me in that one because if I was
Yeah.
in this one, I don't know what I would
That's a
happen.
little
I
weird.
just don't know what happened. But not that this one is bad either. They're also bringing up AI. They're bringing up like a really amazing stuff as well. It's just that I feel that uh especially maybe because I'm always in social media because of what I do,
Sure.
that I'm seeing too many things where we are just shutting people down before they speak. We're cutting people off before they have an opinion. Like it's just gotten a little too much. And
Yeah.
I wish that maybe this is something I shouldn't wish, but I sometimes wish that like all of Wi-Fi would just go down for like a week, like and see people come outside and get light, go get some sunlight or something and go actually
Yeah.
experience life outside of the bubble that people have created. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but that's where we are, right? Yeah.
I was talking to my kids the other day, and I was telling them that when I was a kid, we had this rhyme, right? Sticks and stones may break my
Break my
bones,
bones, but words will
but
never hurt
words will
me.
never hurt me. And
Right.
they were like, "What? What do you mean? But words can be hurtful." And I said, "No, they can't. They can hurt your feelings, but they
Right.
can't hurt you."
Right.
Right? I said, and I told my daughter, like, you broke your arm a couple months ago. That hurt. Does feeling sad, is that the same? It's not, right? It's
Right.
not.
It's
And
transient.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think when we started to equate I feel sad with I have a bone sticking out of my arm, like when we put those on the same level, I think we made a big mistake societally,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think that's it is very hard. It's very, very hard when that occurs for somebody to develop emotional resilience. It's very hard
Yes.
when that occurs for somebody to feel comfortable and safe expressing their opinion.
Yeah.
Because if they have that level of if they have that lack of resilience, right? And that equating of I'm sad with somebody broke my arm,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They're certainly not going to share their opinion. They're certainly not going
Right.
to have a candid conversation. They're
Right.
certainly not going to
It's
call somebody
hard.
out for a mistake.
It's so hard for people, Clint, to have a candid conversation. When the big political upheaval came, in our last elections, right?
Hmm.
I felt like I took the red pill from the Matrix and I was able to come out of the Matrix, right? So I was in the Matrix for a very long time, and then I don't know, I just started going down the rabbit hole of truth and rabbit holes of like finding out what's going on in the world for real, reading documents and reading all this government stuff. Like just I don't know why I did that, but I did. Anyway, um, I lost friends. I lost friends of 25 years. I've lost
Yeah.
friends of 25 years. And I'm like, are you serious right now? They're like, no, I cannot deal with you anymore. This is how you think of. I'm like, because I disconnected from the machine. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, well, then we were never friends because if you were my friend, you know that I'm a very opinionated human being. And
Right.
so at least now I feel like I'm opinionated with facts. Before I was just
Mhm.
opinionated because I was full of hot air, you know? But I think one of the most wonderful things in the world, Clint, is when you get older because you really start to realize you know nothing. And I love what you're talking about, with learning from our adversity, learning from our mistake, learning that you don't know it. You just don't.
Yeah.
Right.
You
And we
know.
can always learn. We can always learn, expand, grow. How many things have you learned from your own kids? Right. You must have learned
Yes.
so
Yes.
much. Right.
Yes.
Right. And you're older.
Yeah. And I think
Right.
it's that's to me that's the real value of creating diversity of thought,
Mm-hmm.
of having different
Mm-hmm.
perspectives, of having people who have I was telling somebody recently, like, you've lived a materially different life than I have, and so as a result, when a thing happens, you're going to see details of it that I can't
Right.
see.
Right.
Right.
Vantage point. It's your vantage
If
point.
you, exactly. And if you keep those to yourself, then why are you even here?
Right. Right.
Because
I
I'm
mean,
never going to be
it's
able to, I
sad.
can look at this thing, I can look at this situation for hours and hours and hours, and I'm never going to be able to pull those details out. You can pull them out in 1 second. And if
Right.
you don't share that with the group, if you don't bring that to the table, then you're disrespecting everybody else here by
Right.
saying, no, I'm going to keep that for myself. It's like the
Right.
most selfish act imaginable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you think about like learning from adversity, that's the one I think where it's the most impactful. That's the one where those diverse perspectives, that willingness to share, that's the stuff where it is absolutely at its most important, because it's such a rich and there's so many layers to that onion that can be pulled back, that
Right.
if you see it one way and I see it a different way and we're not sharing, we're not learning.
But how do
And
you get
that's the,
leaders to do that though? How do you get leaders to do that? I'm that way.
yeah.
I've led teams and all of that, and I've always been a servant leader, right? So I work,
Hmm.
I work alongside them, but I also am with them, like completely. I know my place, but I also know where I can learn.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to have an open table of diversity of thought, because I think that's the only way we're going to create like this amazing program,
Only way you win.
right?
Only way you
Yeah,
win.
yeah. So how did you develop that with your team? Like, how were you able to show your team, listen, you probably think you're going to say the most idiotic thing, but I bet you it's not going to be that. So how do we do that, right? Because a lot of our employees or teammates or whatever have you don't feel safe nowadays. It's super hard now, because
It is.
now it's like, well, why did he say that? Or is he pulling a this card or that card? It's so ridiculous. Like, you can't even say anything. So how did you do that? Or how do you do that? What do you do to get these diversity of thoughts out? Like, how do we do that as leaders?
I think it's humility. I think it starts and ends with humility. I think it
Yeah.
really comes down to being able to say, one, I'm going to get the question wrong. Like, I'm going to be wrong.
Yep.
And once you pierce that veil of like perfection, like that expectation of perfection, now people don't say, "Oh, look, he was wrong." Right now they
Right.
go, "Oh, he was wrong." Right? Like
Yeah.
that matches expectation. Um,
Right.
I think the other thing is to say, listen, the percentage, and this is where I've been able to be, I think, successful, is to say, I know that I'm going to get some of them wrong. I know that some of the decisions I make are going to be wrong. What I don't know is what percentage of them are going to be wrong. And you
Mm.
get to influence that, right? I'm a pretty good decision maker when I've got all the facts,
Yeah.
right? If you give me the score of the
Yeah.
game,
I
if you
love
give
it.
me the final score of the game, I know which team to bet on, right? Like I can
Right.
figure it out in retrospect,
Right.
right? What I don't know is how to gather facts in the most efficient way. And that's because I like everybody else, am flawed. We have biases.
Right.
So if you can help me gather facts at the front end better, if you can share your perspective more at the front end of a decision-making process, we're going to make a better decision. And the
Mm-hmm.
percentage of decisions we're going to get right, it's not going to be 50, it's going to be 60, 70, 80.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be the
Mm-hmm.
one who benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep your opinion to yourself, then look, at the end of the day, it's going to be, how good am I at making decisions? How good am I at gathering information? Do you
Right.
really want to just place all of your bets on my intuition? Because that's not the greatest bet,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not. I think that having that honest dialogue early on with people is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think you have to live into it, right? When you get a decision wrong,
I was just gonna say that. That's it.
you don't say, we got the decision wrong.
Yeah.
You say, I got the decision wrong.
Right.
You don't hide behind your team. Don't say this
Right.
was a collective decision. No, it wasn't. It was your call.
Right.
And you screwed up.
Right.
And that's
right.
okay.
And that's okay.
Like,
Own it.
But
Yeah.
let's stand up and take it, right? And if you do
100%.
that, then people go, okay, like now I feel comfortable speaking up.
Right.
Right. I remember I had a
Right.
meeting once where I told people, listen, strong opinions held loosely, strong opinions held loosely. Like, that's who I am. And we had this meeting and I was advocating for this course of action. And I said, like, we absolutely have to do this. Like, the survival of the company depends on us being able to execute this. This is unbelievably important. And one of the women on my team said, well, but if we do that, then this happens, right? And this is bad. And I kind of paused for a second and I said, okay. And I walked up to the board and I scratched it off and I said, then we can never do this, right? Like I'm immediately abandoning the thing that I was advocating for.
Right.
And I think that really, it threw them for a loop. This was early on in my time with that team. And it threw them for a loop and they were like, well, this is weird. Like, how do we gauge this? And I said, guys, when that fact wasn't present, that was the right conclusion. Then that fact became present and it immediately became the wrong conclusion. Why would I ever possibly argue for the wrong conclusion just because it was my idea?
Right.
Am I really that emotionally needy that like I need it to be
Some
my
people
idea?
are. Some people are. I've worked with leaders that are like that. I've worked with leaders that'll say, come on, let's have this diversity of thought you're talking about. And as soon as you have a diverse thought to theirs, it's a shutdown, right?
What they want is they just want a diversity of voice saying their own opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like that's it. They just want somebody else's voice with their opinion. But like that,
Go ahead.
What's the point of that?
You know what happens too is you quickly develop a lot of yes people, and you also develop a lot of people who no longer want to be a part of your vision, your mission, your plan. And I mean, years and years ago, I worked with someone like that. And I was like, this is ugly. And this is, I don't like this, and when she would say, anybody have a question, please raise your hand. If I would raise my hand, she goes, oh, yes, Neena, because gosh forbid you ask her a question of something she said that was not good for at least 60% of the team. You know what I'm saying? So that was a really hard time. It's hard to work with leaders like that. And you try your best to, okay, I see her point of view. Okay. All right. But then you don't have one, so that's a difficult thing. I'm glad that you're leading your teams in a way that they can trust you. That's what it sounds like to me. Because as soon as you walked up to that board and crossed that out, I would have been like, that's the guy I want to follow. That's the guy I want to follow. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, what's the point of the exercise? Like, why do we do what we do if we're not going to have that trust, if we're not going to have that learning, if we're not going to grow? Like then in that case, we're just we're trudging to the salt mines every day. Like, that's horrible, right?
It is horrible.
The fun comes from throwing the challenging idea on the table and saying, here's the thing we don't know how to do. Right? Now let's tackle it together. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
And I think that's so essential.
It is. And I think that, what we're talking about is so important right now. And I hope that people who are listening, because I have a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders that listen to the show, and a lot of, 7-8 figure people listen to the show, and they, they'll email me and say, wow, this person on this show was amazing. Right. So I'm hoping that the leaders who are listening understand that, you're going to have to really think of the whole team as well. Stop catering to the minority. Stop catering to the ones that are just yelling and screaming and stamping their little feet, when if it's not going to really benefit the majority. And I think we've seen that now, right? A lot of pushback on all these major big companies because they're listening to the minority who are making a lot of noise. And now the majority who's working for you and are really hardworking people and are just trying to make it another day are going to be affected, right? And that's just the way, like what you said, like, hey, so what does work? Oh, that doesn't hurt. And that's the solution. Oh, let's cross that out. Let's try again. Right. But people are too emotional now. So even leaders are too emotional and are making really harsh decisions without sitting and saying, wait a second, what does this look like for everyone in this team? Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you have that level of trust and that level of alignment, I think it makes decision making. I don't want to say it makes it easier, because I don't think that's the right answer. But I think it transforms it to become like one of the challenges gets taken off the plate, right? And I think as leaders, right, our job is to create. Our job is to make things. And the best way to do that, right? The best way to be able to have that creation is to find the path of, I don't want to say least resistance, right? But find the path of the appropriate resistance. It's not easy to push water uphill. Don't do that. Find the way to push it downhill.
Right.
And when you think about, like, you made the point that, the minute I walk up and scratch that off on the board, you go, that's the guy I want to follow. Okay, 6 meetings from now, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, when I say, here's an idea, you're going to remember that
Yep.
moment, and you're
Yep.
going to go, listen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
right? I'm going to
Right.
give him the benefit of the doubt, and maybe there's a thing he knows that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And unless I have a really good reason to speak up, like maybe I'll buy in a little bit sooner, right?
Yep.
A little bit
Yep.
sooner, because I remember that good thing. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that level of trust is
huge.
If it's not built on authenticity, it's not going to get built.
So true. So true. And like I said, I mean, I worked with companies like this, way back when, where they would, they would say that they wanted diversity of thought. They would say that. But
Yep.
then when you realize that you are going to get hammered, you
Yep.
don't ever speak up again. You never speak up again. And then this only goes in one direction. And so you follow along until you don't. You follow along until you don't, right? Because after a while, the paycheck doesn't mean anything anymore, because you're just like, I can't.
It's an every 2-week bribe. That's what it is. It's an every 2-week bribe.
That's a yes.
Hey, listen, just disregard your humanity, disregard what you believe, and every 2 weeks I'll shoot you a new bribe. Right? Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really effective in that area is getting people to own the outcome, right? Not only effort, but own the outcome. And I think when I hear people say, like, well, I worked really hard on this, that's great, but this isn't third grade gym class. Like, you're not getting a trophy for participation. I don't care if you worked hard on it. I appreciate that you worked hard on it, and that's great. But I'm more concerned about, did you get it done? I'm more concerned about, did you deliver against the thing we talked about, right? I use the 10-80-10 approach to drive accountability for people, and to make sure that we have shared ownership, where I own the first 10%, and it's important for me to draw the box, and then they own the middle 80, and then together we own the last 10, right? And that gives them the freedom to say, I'm going to come back with something that's not perfect. In fact, I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to be 90% of perfect, right? Because then the last 10% we're going to fix. And what that does is it creates these late stage moments of adversity, right? Where we're going to have a conflict built into the development of this thing, right? Whatever this thing is, right? Whatever the project is, there's going to be a pushback at the end of it, right? We're going to change something, or there's something that's not complete, and we're going to argue. Like, we're going to argue about it. And I don't mean argue in a negative context. I mean argue in the most positive context imaginable. What that means, though, is that every single thing that I do with somebody gives us the opportunity to build one more brick in that foundation, or one more block in that foundation of, we can trust each other, right? We can work together, and that's as valuable for me as it is for them. And I think that's something that I think leaders too often forget, that they have to build. They have to try to sell themselves to their people, but they also need their people to sell themselves to them, right? Like, the trust goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And so, and having those built-in moments of adversity and disagreement and conflict, it ensures that nothing ever gets done in kind of okay, that's great, like, move on. We'll just do that, and then move on. It
a better
creates
solution
a much
too.
It does. It does. So I think that's been really effective, and I've really enjoyed getting to see people go from kind of the fear at the front end of, like, wait a minute, you only told me 10% of it, and now I have to do the rest of it. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
We'll fight later.
See you at our deadline. Like, that's, go figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
But, like, don't bring back 100%. Bring back 90%.
Yeah.
Right. Have some stuff that's undone.
Yeah.
And like, that's okay. It creates that space, and it creates that safety. And I think it's been helpful.
I think so too. And I think it creates trust too, because then you're saying to them, I'm going to trust you to come up with this 80% by our deadline, which means you know that they are capable of doing so. And
Absolutely.
they then also feel like, okay, I got to show up and show out here, right?
Yep.
And it pushes them to be better people. I think there's always so many beautiful things out of conflict. So
Yeah.
many beautiful things. You never saw an angle a certain place that, so I think there's just so much beauty in failing, and there's so much
Yes.
beauty in conflict. There's so much beauty
Yes.
in diverse of thought. I love that kind of stuff, right? That's why I called my show Straight Talk to begin with, because I like that dialogue where you push back a little bit, where you guys can look at something different. Well, I don't know about that. How about this? I love that kind of stuff. So, Clint, I know that you don't have like a coaching program and a this program and a that program to sell and this and that, but
Nope.
you do have a lot of wisdom. And that
Thank you.
is something that I, as a person who's always out there having these amazing conversations, I'm so glad you came on to Straight Talk. And I'm glad that we were able to have a really candid conversation about, diversity of thought and all of that. But how do people get like, at least to follow you and stuff? Like, do you put stuff on social media or, things like that, or, blog,
Yeah,
anything? Can you give us
Yeah.
anything, Clint?
the best thing to do, so clintrush.com is the best place to find me and get in touch with me, and LinkedIn. Those are kind of my two
Okay.
places that I live. As far as a blog, it's funny you mentioned that. That's something I've been kind of starting to kick around putting together. So we'll see what the future holds there.
That's good.
But those are the best things, is clintrush.com, and then find me on LinkedIn. And that's the best way to stay in touch
So
with me.
you like connecting, so people can connect with you.
Absolutely. Yes. Reach out. Love having good
Yeah.
conversations.
Awesome. This was a good conversation. Thank you for being on Straight Talk. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Neena. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for having
loved
me.
it. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. You are the best. Okay, I have the best podcasting community ever. I really do. And I appreciate you guys being on here. If you are looking for coaching, please make sure that you also email me at hello@straighttalknosugaradded.com. I work with women and I help them develop that business that they are envisioning in their hearts so that they can win. Thank you guys so much for being here. Love you, love you, love you. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Until next time.
It's easy to lose sleep when you're worried about your health insurance plan. But when you have a family counting on you to take care of them, having the right coverage is more important than ever. That's why Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is here to help. With low to no cost plans for you and your family, so you never go it alone. That's our Anthem. Click to learn more.
Israel is 5,690 miles away from the U.S., 11 hours by plane. Hate travels faster. In a comment, in a post, in a second. Jewish hate is up 388% in the U.S. Black hate, Muslim hate, and Asian hate are up too. When one hate rises, they all do. Let's stand up to all hate together. Share and wear the blue square from standuptojewishhate.org.